With all of the iPhones you can buy from Apple today, which one is the best to buy right now? Starting from the cheapest through to the most expensive. Now in this video, I hope to help you make the right choice when picking up a new iPhone. So don't you dare rush out and buy the latest iPhone 15. Hold tight and let me explain. A quick shout out to the sponsor of this video, Keeper, more on them later on. But to get started, first of all, let's just run through which phones are currently available from Apple's fairly confusing lineup, from SE to Pluses to Pros. We've got the iPhone SE at just $429. This is Apple's cheapest iPhone. Next up is the iPhone 13 at $599. There's also the standard iPhone 14 at $699. There's the 14 Plus, which we have here in yellow, at $799. Then the regular 15 at the same $799 price as the 14 Plus. The 15 Plus at $899. The 15 Pro at $999. And finally, the 15 Pro Max, we've got two of them here, at a whopping $1199. And if you're wondering where the iPhone mini is amongst all of these, well, yeah, this is the year that Apple killed the iPhone mini, which I loved. Now, not everyone can afford to spend over $1,000 on a phone. So first, let's strip it back for the budget buyer. Now, I would say you have two options here. One, buy the Pixel 7a. I kid. One is the iPhone SE at $429, or two, the iPhone 13 at $599. Now, which of these two options really comes down to a few things, because for an extra $170 for the iPhone 13, you are getting a brighter, bigger 6.1-inch and higher quality display over the SE. You get an ultra-wide camera on the back and an upgraded 12-megapixel front-facing camera compared to just a 7-megapixel on the iPhone SE. You get slightly better battery life too, which if you're a heavy user could be the difference between running out before you get home from work or not. That could be a big one. You also get Face ID instead of Touch ID, so you can unlock your phone just by looking at it, which I personally prefer over Touch ID. It is so much faster. The phone unlocks the moment you look at it. And if you're painting or something else like that, you can just look at your phone to see who's messaged you without even touching your phone. Now, you also get a tougher ceramic shield glass on the front, so less likely to smash or crack. There is improved water resistance, where it should survive up to 6 meters of water for up to 30 minutes, instead of just 1 meter on the cheaper model. Great for those who enjoy a long bath or a hot tub, or might accidentally just drop your phone in the sea, perhaps. Now, the iPhone 13 also has MagSafe on the back, which opens up a whole world of magnetic accessories, such as chargers and wallets. You also get double the storage capacity for those kind of base model prices. Now, in terms of the camera, you get additional modes for nighttime photography, also support for cinematic mode, HDR video recording, and personally, the cinematic mode has been a bit hit or miss for me. It's definitely improved recently, but I've had some horrible experiences with it over the years. So the big decision is, are these extra features worth $170 to you? Now, if not, then the iPhone SE is still a great phone. I think this year we've kind of reached peak iPhone across this whole iPhone lineup, where you walk into an Apple store and pick up any phone without it being slow or really unusable or anything like that. But for me, personally speaking, for $170, double the storage, bigger, brighter screen, a bigger battery, more cameras, Face ID, and MagSafe, all great reasons to go for the 13 over the SE. But before we move on, I would say that if those budget options aren't budget enough for you, then there is a lot to be said for buying refurbished, which is something I actually tried out recently to see what sort of iPhone I could get for just $200. So keep watching to learn more about that. But in terms of best overall value though, I think this is absolutely the most trickiest category of this year. You have the iPhone 13 at $599, the iPhone 14 at $699, then either the iPhone 14 Plus, so the bigger version of the 14, or the iPhone 15, both $799, or you have the 15 Plus at $899. Now, this is probably one of the easiest ones to get wrong because of two words. Well, and if. Well, if I get the iPhone 13, it's only another $100 to get the 14. Well, if I get the 14, I might as well get the 14 Plus version for another $100. Well, I can get the 15 for the same price as the 14 Plus, so I might as well do that. But I want a bigger phone. Well, if I'm doing that, I might as well just upgrade to the 15 Plus. And 2 minutes later, you've gone from spending $599 on the 13 to spending an extra $300, maybe even more, to get the 15 Plus or higher. And who's to say that you're going to stop there? So, why should you spend the extra? That's what I'm here to help you with. So the iPhone 13, 14, and 14 Plus all have the A15 Bionic chip in them, which is a really fast processor. But let's be honest, these phones are fast enough already. So in reality, the A16 that you get in the 15 series isn't really noticeable. I mean, you can't really go faster than immediate, can you? So when it comes to the best value mid-range phone, I'm gonna focus on the smaller phones first here. So the 13, the 14, and the 15. But don't worry, I'm gonna talk about the bigger plus size phones in just a moment. So just be patient. Now, as far as these 3 phones go, I've only got 2 of them in front of me. It's really just a choice between the iPhone 13 and the 15, since the upgrade from the 13 to the 14 was, well, basically unnoticeable. So ultimately, with the iPhone 15 being released, why would you buy anything other than that? Now, the 15 gets you better cameras, which can zoom in further. There's extra safety features such as crash detection, which can call emergency services if the phone detects you've been in an accident, though this does also come to the iPhone 14. And there is finally USB-C. So like before, if any of those features are worth the extra $200 to jump from the 13 to the 15, then grab the 15. But for most people, I'd once again recommend the iPhone 13. It is a solid phone, it's fast, reasonable battery life, and it's just an overall just decent phone when you don't need all of the extra bells and whistles of what the 14 or the 15 offer. If you're a bigger is better kind of person though, perhaps it's just the extra battery or you just prefer a bigger screen, then the decision this year is between the 14 Plus or the 15 Plus. And for me, the only reasons from the 14 Plus to the 15 Plus are again pretty similar. You've got better cameras going from 12 megapixels on the 14 Plus to 48 megapixels. You also get 2x zoom over just 1x zoom. You also get USB-C, so you're not carrying around tons of extra charging cables with you all the time, which to some people is a pretty significant upgrade. But that is honestly about it. Yes, you get dynamic island on both of the 15 models, and you also get a little bit brighter in bright environments and what was already a pretty bright phone, to be honest. So if you value the cameras or USB-C, then go for the 15 Plus if you want a big phone. Otherwise, my recommendation would be to stick with the 14 Plus. Or if you don't want a big phone, the regular 13 is still a great phone too. But what about when money isn't a factor? Now for me, I want the very, very best, no compromises phone every single year, just to make sure I have access to the best technology, so I never have to worry that the technology might be holding me back. But this year, introduced a bit of a dilemma for me. Now the iPhone 15 or the 15 Pro Max, because Apple have done something quite sneaky this year which kind of annoyed me. And by sneaky, no, I don't just mean that this year still you have to either buy a Pro or Pro Max to get a faster 120Hz refresh rate. But first, I want to thank you to the sponsor of today's video, Keeper. And whilst I do, my editor is going to add up the cost of all of the iPhones I've ever bought somewhere on the screen as we go, just to see how much of a Apple sheep I am in terms of dollar amounts. So hold on to your hats, this could get quite scary. Now, one of the biggest problems I see from all size businesses today is that they're forgetful. And when it comes to cybersecurity, they just forget that most of the time, the biggest vulnerability is something as simple as using the same password to log into different places. It's sharing those passwords with colleagues. And what about trying to share a login that needs a 2FA code? Like, have you ever been to a place where logging in then sends your colleague a text? Then they have to shout this code over to the office so that someone else can log in. Now, Keeper fixes all these basic problems, but businesses are too busy worrying about the bigger threats, hackers and people trying to intercept payments, that they totally forget that for less than half of a Starbucks coffee per employee per month can patch this pretty gaping hole in their security. Holy crap, I've spent more than $10,000 on iPhones in the last 15 years? Actually, thinking about it, I do think I've had more than 10 grand's worth, I think, of value out of buying an iPhone every single year. Just don't make me add up all the other Apple products I bought, as that would be embarrassing. And if you're sitting there thinking, but Keeper is too much per employee per month, remember again, it is just half the price of a Starbucks per employee per month. Now realize that had you subscribed to Keeper in those 15 years, you could have avoided that time that someone got into your email system. So just sign up using the link down below, use the promo code PEEP50 to get 50% off the first year on a personal or a family subscription, or send this video to your boss and tell them that you are worth way more than just half a Starbucks per month. And maybe just don't ask them how much they spent on iPhones in the last 10 years. So back to my dilemma. The 15 Pro or the 15 Pro Max? And what has made Apple fans so salty? Now, actually, the best flagship would be the iPhone 14 Pro or Pro Max, but Apple being Apple, they have completely discontinued this to get people to buy the latest and greatest. Clever marketing. Deeply frustrating for consumers. So in terms of what you can buy right now today from Apple Direct, it's gonna have to be the 15 Pro or the 15 Pro Max that takes the spot for the best flagship. But for the first time in a while, there are actually some differences between these two phones, aside from the obvious differences, of course, in size. Now we've of course got the all new, stronger, lighter and somewhat prettier titanium shell. You've got the action button, which replaces the traditional mute switch, which you can use to do multiple things. Open the camera, launch apps, even start a shortcut from the shortcuts app. And finally, finally, USB-C with faster USB 3 speeds, which is another cheeky thing Apple have done this year because the regular 15 models only get USB 2 speeds out of their USB-C port. I said USB-C a lot. Oh, and you don't even get a USB cable in the box that can reach those fast speeds. So just be aware of that. But the big improvement with the 15 Pro Max is the new camera setup, which is exclusive to the 15 Pro Max. But Apple have been, well, Apple, and quite sneakily with their marketing here, which is catching quite a few people out. So let me just clear something up for you. Now, the 15 Pro has three 47 megapixel cameras. You get a main, an ultra wide, and a 3x telephoto. In the camera, you have 4 different zoom options. You've got 0.5, 1, 2, and 3x. Now, the reason why there is a 2x is because they're actually combining the 1 and 3x lenses and doing all sorts of like computational photography clever stuff behind the scenes to basically give you the 2x lens without there physically being one on your phone. Whereas in the 15 Pro Max, the 3x telephoto camera is now a 5x telephoto camera, which in camera gives you a 0.5, 1, 2, and 5x. Same situation with the 2x lens, but I've seen Apple claiming to have 10x optical range, which is kind of cheating because the Samsung S23 Ultra has a 10x telephoto lens. Apple's 10x optical zoom range, they're calculating that as the range from the 0.5 lens through to the 5 lens. So 0.5 multiplied gives you kind of a 10x range. Hopefully that kind of makes sense, but other than these confusing changes, the phones are practically identical. Now this year I actually really wanted to go back to the smaller Pro model. Just carrying around a Pro Max phone for a whole year has just felt like carrying around a pretty big lump of metal that is sometimes awkward to pocket and hold. I just really wanted to go back to a smaller Pro phone. But also, I have kids, and having used a phone that did have an actual 10x zoom lens, I've really loved having the option of being able to zoom in a little closer to capture those moments growing up. And without doing that parent dash thing, you know, the one where you frantically just pull the phone out your pocket and run to get close enough to take a photo. So for me, the 5x telephoto is well worth the 15 Pro Max being the best flagship phone. But if you don't have kids or you have no reason to use those cameras, then it is undoubtedly the 15 Pro, and both your wallet and your hands will be grateful for the choice. But what if you've already got a relatively recent iPhone, maybe a 14 or a 13, and you're thinking about upgrading? Well, under no circumstances should you do what I've done here and rushed out to buy the latest and greatest phone just because RIP my wallet. And hey, look, I know it's hard to believe as a tech YouTuber who is seemingly surrounded by lots of expensive tech, but I use all my like YouTubery income to pay the wages of my team rather than live in some kind of YouTuber paradise. So if you want to make my team happy, they would love for you to like this video and hit that subscribe button too. Now, my advice, if you are on an iPhone 14 already, just don't. There is almost no reason to upgrade to an iPhone 15 unless you really want the camera upgrade or USB-C charging, which for some people is enough of a reason. Now again, we've really reached peak iPhone in the last 3 generations. So if you've got one of those, don't panic buy the latest. You're going to do fine without it. But if you want to see how much iPhone you can get for $200, check out this video and I'll see you in there. Cheers, bye-bye.